Welcome back to video 8 for chapter 6, Bone in Anatomy and Physiology. In this video, we're going to start looking at the process of bone development, which is also called ossification. So there's actually two different types of ossification, and the first one we're going to talk about is called intramembranous ossification. So intra means within. So this is within a membrane. So this is a process of bone formation within connective tissue membrane. And there are certain bones that form with this process. And namely, a lot of the skull bones form like this. The clavicles, which we commonly know as the collarbones, and the mandible, or our lower jaw. So those bones form with this kind of formation or development. So we're looking at how these bones develop during fetal time. So while the baby is in the mother's womb. We're not talking about how bones grow, but this is how they are formed. So this process follows different steps, and I will have a video that I will post that will go back over this and show an animation of this process. But we start with osteogenic cells, and they cluster and turn into osteoblasts in the connective tissue membrane. And it forms something called an ossification center. And begin to form our bone extracellular matrix, so osseous tissue. So that's the first step. So something triggers these osteogenic cells to move. They are turned into osteoblasts in a membrane, and it forms a little area that begins to form bone ECM. Now we know that the osteoblasts, as they're making this ECM, become trapped in the ECM, and now they're osteocytes. ECM secretion stops, on the surface, osteoblasts form more ECM and bone columns form. So we have bone forming, but then on the surface we have a little bit of osteoblasts still present, and they're going to start forming bone columns from one surface of the bone to the other. The bone columns begin to fuse to form trabecula and spongy bone eventually. We also have blood vessels beginning to form, because we have to get all this calcium and other minerals for the osteoblasts. So during this whole process, as the bone begins to develop, the cells secrete different chemicals that promote angiogenesis, which is the formation of blood vessels that will actually grow to the bone to provide nutrients, calcium, phosphorus, and all the things needed to make bone ECM. And our last step, periosteum forms around the bone, And osteoblasts under the periosteum secrete more ECM to form a layer of compact bone. And then eventually red bone marrow forms in the spongy bone. So in this process, we first form a middle layer of spongy bone, and then as the periosteum develops, a layer of compact bone forms in there that sandwiches in the compact or the spongy bone, and we get the layers of different bone forms. So it kind of looks like that, where we have compact bone here, we have spongy bone here, and here we have the periosteum. So it starts forming this layer first, and then as the periosteum forms, it secretes this layer to build up on both sides. So in this, we're going to have blood vessels and bone marrow eventually form.